Tonight, we are joined by Dr. William Li. We are so honored to have him with us again. Dr. William Li is an internationally renowned physician, scientist, and author of the New York Times bestseller, Eat to Beat Disease, The New Science of How Your Body Can Heal Itself, and Eat to Beat Your Diet, Burn Fat, Heal Your Metabolism, and Live Longer. His groundbreaking research has led to the development of more than 40 new medical treatments that impact care for more than 70 diseases, including diabetes, blindness, heart disease, and obesity. His TED Talk, Can We Eat to Starve Cancer, has garnered more than 11 million views. He is also the president and medical director of the Angiogenesis Foundation, and he is leading global initiatives on food as medicine. So please welcome Dr. William Li.
Yay, it's quite a bio, Dr. Li.
Thank you.
And I know you're nowhere close to done.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure to speak to the Sakara community.
Well, we like to start off every podcast with the question around your mission. I know we've been fortunate enough to have you on the podcast before and asked you this question. So I'm curious, what is your mission here on Earth? Has it changed since the last time, or is it the exact same?
My mission has always been to conduct kind of cutting edge research to help us understand how our body responds to what we put inside it, specifically foods and especially plant-based foods, and also think about what that means to our health and our humanity. And when it comes to humanity, a lot has to do with how we enjoy our lives. So the other part of my mission is to communicate that, because unlike some of the stuff you heard in my background for developing new therapies for serious diseases, which can take decades, food is immediacy. So something that we talk about today could be translated into those of you watching, you could put it into action right after the show.
It's one of, I think, your superpowers, Dr. Li, is, I know you're a researcher and scientist yourself, and so you're so deeply in the minutia and the details and the mechanisms of how food impacts our health. But then you do such a beautiful job of translating it so that people can really understand how to take control of their health, how to make really good decisions for what's on their plate and how they nourish. So we wanted to talk about a few themes today with you, all obviously under the umbrella of what all three of us love, which are plants. But I'd love to start with longevity. There's a lot of studies behind longevity and consuming a plant-forward diet. So can you start off by talking about just what is longevity and then help us understand the role that plants play?
Right. It's a really big and great question to ask about longevity. And a lot of people think about longevity in terms of aging, right? And specifically anti-aging. But I have a different point of view. And that is that we begin living our lives the moment we're born. So when you're, 1 year old, you're 100% older than you were from the day you were born. And every day after that, forget about counting candles, our bodies are actually evolving and unfolding and taking us on our life journey. And so from my perspective, longevity is about actually staying on your own personal journey for as long as you possibly can. And it's not just being on the journey, it's really enjoying the journey along the way. And so it's not just the years, it's also the quality of the years that go along with it. And that brings me back to this whole idea of foods that we enjoy, and the role of plants, because plants actually form a critical foundation for longevity. And almost every study that's been done in large populations, I'm talking about tens and hundreds of thousands of people, actually even millions of people over decades, what we do know is that people who eat more of a plant-based diet live longer, period.
And why is that, Dr. Li? Why do you think?
So this is actually one area of research that I am actively engaged in. what's in a plant compared to what's in a steak or, a McNugget or whatever you want to call it. But here's the thing. Plants are a core source of macro and micronutrients that our body needs to be able to stay alive. All right. Now, I'm going to go beyond staying alive in just a minute, but just to stay alive. Plants have moisture. We need liquid. We need to be hydrated. You have a watermelon, you're getting a lot of liquid into your body. Plants have sugar. And I know this is considered a controversial topic, but I'm going to strip away all the controversy. I'm going to basically power wash the siding of the house and take away all the controversies. Pretty simple. Our body needs sugar for energy. And the more sugars, natural sugars that we can get from plants that we eat, whether you're talking about a juicy summer peach or a ripe orange or an apple, or whether you're talking about a carrot, okay, all have sugar in it. We need that to survive. The most sugar-avid organs in order to function. If you want to live well, all right, and live long, you need your brain to be functioning, right? Nobody wants to live long with dementia. And so it turns out there's a lot of research now that shows that not only do the bioactives, the natural chemicals found in plants, and the fiber that's found in plants help slow down cellular aging, they actually can help to counter dementia. They can actually help our brain health be better for longer. And so I'm going to try to keep bringing together this idea of quality of life as we have this conversation, because it's very easy to just kind of robotically go through the dictionary of foods that you should be eating. But I want to remind everyone that eating foods is part of our humanity. And if we always keep that sort of within our, sort of on our radar screen when we talk about foods, then it's going to be an easier lift to think about why we should be eating healthy.
And when you started off, you said, you were looking at the research behind like, what is it that plants have or don't have that helps them, promote longevity in humans. And so as we think about, a plant-forward diet versus lots of other kinds of diets, right? It can be a fat-forward diet, a protein-forward diet, a ultra-processed food-forward diet. What is it that the plants have or don't have? So you said fiber, but are there things that like they don't have that, those other foods might that help promote longevity as well?
Yeah, well, first let's start, but let's keep going. And, and I think that for the purposes of everyone watching, I'm going to say some names of substances. You don't need to memorize them. Just know that there are people like me who are doing the research that are actually cataloging them. But if you want to look at lycopene in tomatoes or in watermelon, or you want to look at chlorogenic acid, which is found in peaches and it's found in coffee, or you want to look at catechins, which are found in green tea and in walnuts, or if you want to take a look at beta-cryptoxanthin, which is found in persimmon, all of these types of bioactives, these are natural chemicals that are found in the food, plus the fiber, okay? They all contribute to activating our body's hardwired health defense systems. The more activated your health defenses are, the longer your health is going to be protected over the years. Very, very important concept. One of those health defenses is our gut microbiome. Healthy bacteria live in our gut, about 39 trillion of them. And dietary fiber happens to be our gut bacteria's favorite food, right? So if you have a pet dog or a cat or a bird or a fish, I'm sure whoever is assigned to take care of it is feeding it beautifully every single day, right? And what do? They pay you back with love. I don't know about the fish or the bird, but certainly the dog or the kitten might actually pay you back with companionship, right? And our gut bacteria pays us back for feeding them by releasing their own substances. These are healthy bacteria metabolites, all right? And they're called short-chain fatty acids. And guess what they do? They slow down cellular aging by lowering inflammation. Now, inflammation gets a lot of airplay. Like if you listen to social media, you listen to what people say talk to each other about. Like, you got to lower inflammation. A lot of people who talk about it don't even know what it is. Inflammation is a natural part of our body's health defenses. Whenever you cut yourself, all right, the inflammatory cells in our body are first responders. You cut yourself in the kitchen, you scrape your knee, you fall off a bicycle. All right, what happens? Your body calls 911, your body's cellular 911. First responders are inflammatory cells, and they arrive right at the site of the accident in order to clean it up. And they make sure that the dirt is cleaned up and the dead cells are cleaned up and any bacteria are dealt with as much as possible. They're the first responders, okay? And later, any healing that needs to happen, your immune response the other part of the immune response might take over, and your blood vessels will start growing and your healing will start occurring. But inflammation, that's good inflammation. But what happens is that bad inflammation is when that first responders don't go away. So the EMTs don't go away. The firemen don't go away. Accidents been cleaned up, but they're just hanging out in the highway now. They're hanging out by your side of the street. You're like, hey, man, like, time to go home, right? Like, why are you hanging out? And these chronic inflammatory cells, when they hang out and they get bigger and there's a big crowd, now you got a riot of firemen and EMTs. Like, that's no good. Another explanation I give for inflammation is like, if you ever gone camping, right? Gets in the evening, you're going to actually, cook something outside. You're going to make a little campfire. You've got kids, you get the kids around the campfire. You tell ghost stories or sing songs or whatever you do. Like, it brings me back to my childhood. It's nice and warm, like a little crisp night. You got a nice campfire. It's great. That's inflammation, normal, healthy inflammation. Now, at the end of the night, you're supposed to put out the fire and you crawl into your tent to sleep. And that's what happens in inflammation. It goes away as healing begins, okay? Nighttime's over, time to go to bed, inflammation goes away. But if inflammation doesn't go away, and this is what happens when you eat ultra-processed food, junk foods, you eat too much saturated fat, you consume microplastics, okay? Things that are bad for our health and our body and bad for our longevity, all right? Then the inflammation sticks around and can actually start to spread. So imagine that campfire, that I'm talking about, and instead of putting it out, you leave it burning, and a gust of wind blows an ember out, and now you've caught the woods on fire. Okay, anybody who's in Colorado or California knows what this is all about. Now you got a forest fire, and now you've got this raging fire you can't put out anymore. That is a type of inflammation that causes disease and shortens your longevity. So plant-based foods basically introduce fiber and other polyphenols that help feed the gut. One of the really important things about gut health is that they calm inflammation. They tell the EMT guys to go home. All right, we're done here. Scram, get out of here. All right. And if there is any embers that have come out of the fireplace or the campfire into the woods, it stomps it out. All right. That's what's important about plants. It's not just because your mom told you eat the spinach or the broccoli. It's really that you are caretaking yourself, not just for tonight, but you're actually caretaking yourself for the rest of your life. And that is one of the core central tenets of why plant-based foods are so important for our health and longevity.
Yeah, I think it's easy to kind of forget that point in today's day. I'm lucky enough, I get to see your face pop up into my Instagram feed on a regular basis, talking about different types of plants, different fruits, pomegranate or lycopene and tomato. But so much out there in this world today is so focused on, meat, carnivore diet, getting 150 grams of protein. And I just see this shift happening where they're forgetting about those micronutrients and the fiber to be just focused on one macronutrient. And so what are your thoughts on that? What are your concerns? And what do you think?
It's a great point to sort of try to flesh out. because so often when it comes to nutrition and health and wellness, our culture tends to take one thing, blow it up, and make it all about that. And,
Right.
if a little is good in our culture, more has got to be better.
Mm.
And in reality, that's not how our body is designed. Our body's designed to welcome and thrive with diversity. So just like a good community has got different types of people in it, very diverse, right? Good neighborhood's going to be very diverse. So too should our weekly meal plan. We should be eating as many different types of foods as possible. And most common, many types we should be eating is in plants. The reason is these micronutrients, the polyphenols, are different for different plants. Okay. You want lactic acid in your strawberry, but you want chlorogenic acid in your apple, and you want actually to have sulforaphane in your Brussels sprouts, and you want to have allicin in your garlic, and you want to have lycopene in your tomato. Listen, you don't need the listeners. You guys don't need to know all those details. What you should know is that if you eat a colorful plate, like we've been talking about for a few decades now, you're actually going to be doing your body a world of favors that are going to be actually good for you. Now, so the diversity is important. And the more diverse you eat, so like if you eat only carrots or only tomatoes, that's not good either. You want to actually mix it up.
Well,
right?
these Sakara lights are getting 200 different plant ingredients into their bodies each week when they're on breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Sakara. So they're getting a lot of diversity here.
Listen, I have received Sakara boxes before, and I know every time I open up the box, it is like looking at the rainbow. It is nicely packaged, beautifully sliced, nicely organized, colorful plates. You don't need to think about how to create the rainbow. It is the rainbow. All right. So that's, so you guys have done a wonderful job in taking a lot of the work out of eating the rainbow. That's one thing that I love about what Sakara meals are like. Now, let's talk about the meat part for a second, okay? Because not everybody is a vegetarian or a vegan.
And we're also not anti-meat. We're plant-focused and plant-forward.
Yeah. And I want to actually underscore why that's so important. Look, we do eat meat. If you take a look at our jaws and our teeth, listen, if you're a paleontologist, if you're a dinosaur discoverer, look at T-Rex. T-Rex's teeth, which are fangs, are designed to eat meat and meat only. All right. If you look at humans, our teeth there's a little T-Rex and there's a little Brontosaurus in us. We eat plants and we eat meat. All right. So we're this uniquely evolved species that can actually mix up our game. All right. We got a lot of game when it comes to food. Now, here's the thing. Meat is one source of protein, and it's a source of iron and a bunch of other things that might be good. But let's not make any mistake. Eating only meat, you're leaving out all those other benefits from those colorful plant-based foods, the polyphenols, the dietary fiber, all those incredibly important micronutrients that are critical for everyday health, but also for longevity. Now, I think that, the way that I think probably the three of us were all raised when we were kids growing up is, think about it. You got to get your entree, which is going to be a meat or something, a chicken. You're like, go to a wedding, chicken or fish, right? So it's always going to be like, that's the main thing you worry about. And then the vegetables are kind of like afterthoughts. We'll put some things on the sides. They even call them sides, which is kind of crazy, right? So what I encourage people to do is to invert that, like upend that idea. Okay, do it backwards. So when I go out to eat at a restaurant, let's just say, all right, I am actually, or planning a meal, I'm actually trying to think what plants I want to feature because they taste great. And I know they're going to be well executed. They're going to be amazing on the plate. And I begin designing my meal around that. So if you're looking at a menu, for example, I actually look first at all the things that are on the plants, including the sides, and I will choose that first. Then if I feel like eating meat or fish or whatever, I will then regard that as a side dish and don't eat a lot of it. Because if you take a look at the healthiest diets in the world, the Mediterranean diet, traditional Mediterranean diet, and a traditional Asian diet, like in Okinawa, all these blue zone areas where people live long and live well, live long and live well. These are the two things that go hand in hand. They're really, I call them identical twins of like your goals of health. Nobody wants to live long and live poorly. All right. I mean, yeah, and of course, we all want to get as many years as we actually can. But if you take a look at how those healthy cultures, dietary patterns, they make the plant-based foods the main, and meat is a condiment. It's a little side dish, and everybody shares it because they're sharing it. I remember from the time I was a kid, because how I grew up was sort of in an Asian household with an Asian diet. I remember going out to a steakhouse the first time, and somebody plopped this like huge, thick, gigantic steak, and of course, whoever was taking us out to dinner was so proud of it. And I'm like we're going to feed like 10 people with this thing, right? And nope, it was meant for one person. So I think that we are now in a culture that's shifting. We're beginning to get smart by going back to basics. And we realize that the diversity of plants, which taste great, are really what we should be grounding our diet in. And then anything else you want to add to it, try to make it healthy, try to make it clean, try to prepare it in healthy ways. And no matter what it is, don't eat too much of it. That's the secret to longevity.
This is something that, I personally am really trying to help people understand is like, it doesn't have to be that difficult. And this idea of nutritionism, as Michael Pollan talks about, and you talked about it too, it's like the need to focus in on one thing and make it more important than anything else. And it's the same as people look at protein because they're looking at, muscle function, muscle growth, metabolism. But that's one lens as we think about overall health. And there's also been studies that have shown, that your gut health greatly, greatly impacts muscle health and building muscle as well. And so I think, as you said, Dr. Lee, you don't actually have to understand all of this. You just have to eat enough diversity of plants. I love the palm-sized protein, and really think about it like that and enjoy it. And we talk about eating the rainbow. We talk about making things delicious. Like, it doesn't have to be so complicated. And it's something we really try and promote here. And it's why we spend so much time making sure the food is beautiful to look at. It's delicious to eat. I'd love to, so we talked about inflammation. We talked about how plants can combat inflammation. I'd love to talk about what causes inflammation, and then also what are some of the downstream effects of inflammation, like, weight gain, et cetera. I think there's a few that might surprise people as we start to think about, what long-term chronic, inflammation can do to the body.
Yeah. Listen, inflammation is like that campfire. A little bit of it is great to warm your hands by. But it's got to go away, and it really is kind of a secret weapon to get to take care of short-term problems for only a short term. Okay, for a short time. Chronic inflammation is where you have that raging forest fire, and it becomes a problem. And that raging forest fire does all kinds of things. I mean, the first thing it does is that it actually speeds up your cellular aging. It wears you down, makes every organ in your body age faster if you're chronically inflamed. How do we know this? Well, researchers have actually taken a look at cells that are exposed to inflammatory cytokines. These cytokines are natural chemicals that inflammatory cells, the cells in your body, the first responders, they have them in their little toolkit. The EMTs bring them to the side, and you can measure these things in the bloodstream. And we know that people who are chronically inflamed, their blood is packed with these things. In fact, a lot of people who are going to integrative and wellness physicians, one of the blood tests that almost everybody should order, okay? And I'm a doctor, so I can tell you this, is a blood test that we didn't used to order 20 years ago or even 15 years ago. And it's something called CRP. C as in Charlie, reactive, that's CR. P is protein, C-reactive protein. It is one of the body's responses to inflammation. And so when you've got CRP, this inflammation protein, high in your body, you might not know exactly where the inflammation is coming from. You might not know what's causing it. All right. But it means that you've got this forest fire burning. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And this is the smoke. So then you would actually want to go and try to figure out where that inflammation is. And it could be anywhere. But I will tell you that if you eat ultra processed foods with artificial chemicals, artificial preservatives, artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, and then all these shelf stabilizers. One of the geniuses of the food industry revolution that occurred in the mid 1900s, right? So you're talking about after World War II, like people weren't killing each other with tanks in Europe anymore. And so what they were doing is the peace dividend was to actually figure out how to actually make food cheaper, more widely available, engineer it to taste great, and make it last forever, right? You all have heard about the Twinkie that, is around like 25 years or 30 years from now, and it still looks like a Twinkie, all right? No food would actually look like that. So this is what happens when you actually eat some of these factory-made synthetic chemicals in our body. We now know that it's going to cause an alarm. EMT is going to come by. You can't put out that fire. Your CRP, your inflammatory process is going to go up. And that inflammation will start damaging your cells and makes your telomeres shrink faster. Telomeres are one of those, it's at the cap on your DNA. All right. It protects your DNA. Our DNA actually reflects our age, our biological age. So if you think about it, our DNA, by the way, do you guys know how much DNA is in every cell in your body?
Oh, no.
Goes around the earth once, twice?
No, that's blood vessels. And it goes around the earth.
Okay.
But great memory about that. Okay, so if I were to take a swab of your cheek and under a microscope, get one of your cells, you guys can choose which one wants to go for this, and I were to take a little tiny scalpel and open up that cell and start pulling out the DNA, I would pull out 6 feet of DNA. Every cell has a 6-foot strand of DNA. Now, if that DNA gets messed up with ultraviolet radiation, or I throw some chemicals at it, some artificial sweeteners or preservatives, it's not going to be happy, and that cell is going to get messed up, right? Now, there's 2 ways to damage that DNA. One is exposures, right, to that long 6-foot strand. And normally in the cell, by the way, it's all wound up. It's kind of like, like a fish, like a fishing line. Like all that fishing line is all wound up around the chassis of the rod, right? So in the spool. So your DNA is wound up in what we call chromosomes. However, not only can you attack the line, all right, the DNA, but you can attack it from the ends. So when I think about 6 feet long, imagine a shoelace that's 6 foot long. All right. I don't know, probably some basketball player has a shoelace like that. All right. Now, at the end of the shoelace, what do you have? You have these protective caps. They're called caplets, in fact, right? They're little plastic things at the end. We all remember when we were a kid, right? And you tie your shoes, you need those caps. They click and clack along the side of your shoe when you're tying your shoelace, the way that, your mom or your teacher told you how to do it. Now, what happened when we were kids and those plastic caps fell off or they broke off? It frayed. The shoelaces frayed on the ends. And that is what inflammation can do to the end of our 6 foot long DNA in every cell in our body. It can actually start cracking and messing up those protective caps. Those are the telomeres. And now, just like the shoelace that's fraying, you ever try to tie your shoe or try to thread a shoelace through those holes when the caps are gone? Not easy, right?
Yeah, not easy. I'm trying to teach my daughter actually how to sew right now. And when the thread is like frayed like that, you can't thread the needle. It's impossible.
Exactly. So this is one of the things that when you have plant-based foods, you actually protect those caps. You protect your DNA, all right, and prevent it from fraying and keep it as intact as possible for as long as possible. Health, living well, living long, slows down cellular aging. This is something that's really a really important thing. Like I'm just telling you, researchers are working this out. And again, we're taking this opportunity in this conversation to share with the Sakara community, what we're learning. But at the end of the day, all you got to remember is that natural, whole, plant-based foods do the work for you. You don't need to understand the details. You just need to enjoy.
One takeaway from today. Yeah, I love that. And so, okay, so we know that, when it's not, a food isn't in that form, that it can cause inflammation. What are some other things that can cause inflammation, like stress, et cetera? Anything that has surprised you or might surprise our listeners?
Yeah, well, so there's stress can definitely cause inflammation. Stress hormones that our brain and our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys, release, if the hormones remain high at a high level, think PTSD, all right? What that does is that it actually stimulates inflammation in your body. And again, inflammation, a little bit's fine. A lot of it that doesn't go away, that's a big problem. Okay. There's other things that cause inflammation that many people might not appreciate. So think about our lives, right? So the three of us, we're sitting here, and Whitney, if I were to say, tell me your favorite vacation spots, or Danielle, I'd say, like, what's your favorite beach? Or you ask me, like, where are the best restaurants around the world? We would be able to have a whole conversation around that, right? Think about the exposures that we have in traveling the journey of our lives, okay? And for people who don't travel a lot, that's okay. You still go to the store, you still go to the gas station, you still go to the school for a drop-off or whatever, okay? During those journeys, we are all exposed to things in the environment. We're exposed to radiation from the air. We're exposed to smoke particles, depending on where you live, more or less. You're exposed to off-gassing from the new carpet or the new car or the rental car, where they actually clean the car to make it smell new and cleaned up. But hey, it's a solvent that they're actually putting in there, or frankly, even the bathroom. You go to a public restroom, like in a hotel room, smells nice because room service has been there. Guess what? They're spraying stuff in that room to make it smell like lavender. That's an artificial
Biggest
chemical.
pet peeve.
Right? You know what I'm talking about, right? So there is something called the exposome. We each have our own exposome, and that's the lifelong exposure over a period of time of the various different elements that can actually assault our health. All right. We don't even think about it, but it's out there. All right. If you're in a sunny environment or laying out on the beach, you're getting exposed to the sun. You might not burn, but that's part of your exposome. All right. Your track record, your resume of things you encountered in an environment. Over time, if you're exposed to more harmful things, you're going to have more inflammation. That's just the way it is. Hence, the importance that every day, 3 times a day, if you're making a meal decision, you have the opportunity to counter that, counter your own exposures. All right. So here's an example of something pretty amazing. Look, I'm sure all of us have enjoyed going out into the sun, whether it's on a summer holiday or whether it's on, if you have another home you go to, or maybe visiting somebody in a tropical place. And you're gonna get a lot of sun, and that's great. You need vitamin D for your skin, so get some sunshine. And even if you don't get sunburned, all right, you're actually going to be causing some mutations on your skin from doing that. And by the way, you don't have to be out at the beach. Even being stuck in traffic on a sunny day. Think about the traffic in Los Angeles for a commute. You're stuck in the traffic for like an hour and a half, and that sun is coming through the windshield, and maybe you have the window down and your arm out the window. You're getting ultraviolet radiation. All right. Now, it turns out that, and studies in humans have shown this, if you actually eat plant-based foods, specifically like a tomato, or have a glass of watermelon juice or 2 slices of watermelon with lycopene, that's an antioxidant that protects your DNA, a couple of hours before you go out into the sun exposure, it actually neutralizes the damage to your DNA. It's like sunscreen from inside your body that you're able to do. And it doesn't sweat off, right? And so this is an example of how powerful food is to counter those exposures we have. And I didn't talk about burning. I didn't talk about, a tanning booth. I'm just talking about going out and enjoying a beautiful day. That's just how powerful our foods can be on an everyday basis. You don't have to think too much about it. Just realize what we eat actually protects us from the inside out.
Yeah, I think, one of the things it makes me think about is that trend that's been going around of like talking about cortisol face and how inflammation can cause so much swelling, can cause weight gain. And, we tend to get a lot of Sakara who come to us and say, I'm looking to lose some weight. And I think we've been taught over the past many decades that weight loss is calorie in, calorie out. And what's so interesting about this, notion of inflammation is that it's actually not that simple. And as you said, when the fire is raging and burning, your normal kind of like metabolic functions don't get to do what they get to do to keep you healthy and at the right healthy weight. So can you talk about the correlation of inflammation and weight gain, weight loss, and how plants play a role in that?
Yeah, so this is an area I wrote about in my second book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. There's a whole section about this. And I really kind of been doubling down on putting content on my YouTube channel, and I've spent a lot of time talking about this as well. So people can check it out on my YouTube as well. But here's the deal. There is a really, really interesting role that body fat plays. And understanding the role that body fat has to produce healthy hormones in our body is critical for understanding why inflammation in our body fat, when we have too much of it, is so dangerous for our health. So let me kind of back up a couple of steps and describe this. What does body fat do? What do you guys think? What do you think some of the beneficial things of body fat are? What do you think?
It can keep you warm. It can be an energy storage.
Yep.
Famine. It's endocrine tissue.
Yep, exactly. You guys are not surprisingly, you have much more knowledge than many people do. So fat is a cushion and an insulation. Fat stores energy. So when we're eating a meal, it's our fat cells are really like the gas tank in a car. It stores energy. Nothing wrong with that. And by the way, this is why people, especially women who are like bodybuilders, who go right down to like 3% body fat. All right, they stop menstruating. They run out of energy. People are super tired. Hey, you don't have any fuel tanks, right? So that's one of the reasons. It's a fuel tank. Third thing is that it is a endocrine organ. Now, endocrine organ means it's an actual organ that produces hormones. Now, there's about a dozen organs that healthy body fat actually produces. Now, I'm telling you healthy body fat because we need our body as fuel tanks and as cushions and as a hormone organ, like your thyroid, like your adrenals, like your pituitary. I know people get into thyroid all the time. Listen, your body fat's like way more important than your thyroid gland. It's not, which is better, but in terms of like the hormones that are produced, all right. So the thyroid makes thyroid hormone. Your body fat, adipocytes, those are the fat cells, make adiponectin. That's adiponectin, adiponectin. That's a hormone. And if I were to draw, if we were to each donate a little tube of blood, the standard tube in the doctor's office, right? I'm a doctor, and we were to send it all off, okay? Our thyroid hormones will probably be a little bit different based on our gender differences and where we are in our lives and our age and everything else. But I will tell you, the one hormone in the blood, all three of us, if I ask the lab to measure every hormone out that's known, is that adiponectin is going to be pretty much the same among the three of us. And it's going to be 1,000 times higher than your thyroid hormone. Okay. Like that's how important our body fat's hormone is. And what does adiponectin do? Now, we're going to get into a little bit of interesting stuff. Adiponectin, made by your healthy body fat as a hormone, works as a buddy, a partner with insulin in order to be able to help insulin draw blood sugar, glucose into your muscles and store it into your body fat. If you want your insulin to work, if you want to have insulin sensitivity that's normal, you want your adiponectin to be there. It's like, it's like a diving partner, like a diving buddy. Adiponectin works with you, to go explore those coral reefs. You really need that buddy, these two buddies together. If you don't have adiponectin, insulin kind of doesn't know what to do. All right. And so you get insulin insensitive. All right. You lose insulin sensitivity. And that is a setup for metabolic disaster. And when your insulin isn't working well and adiponectin is not working well, you feel weak. You're not actually getting enough energy. And so when does adiponectin get messed up? When does this critical, 1,000 times higher than any other hormone in your blood, get messed up? It gets messed up when you've got too much body fat. All right. Because when you have just the right amount of body fat, healthy body fat, not only do you look good, but actually you actually have the fat cells are making normal adiponectin. If you pile up too much body fat by eating too much food, any type of food, volume of food, eat calories, especially sugar sweetened stuff like added sugar. And if you mess up parts of your body where you're going to start accumulating body fat, like big mass of body fat is very inflammatory. Okay, the bigger the fat mass, the more inflammation develops inside it. Okay, and basically, when your fat is inflamed, that inflammation rips through the fat all by itself. And think about these hormones, these 16 hormones, a dozen hormones. It's like a symphony, right? So if you've ever been to the symphony, you're going to play Beethoven's, fifth. You got a conductor. You've got, the entire symphony orchestra there. Adiponectin is like the trumpet, the trombone is like got the loudest sound out there. And what happens is that's going about your normal healthy body fat's doing that. But if you actually have inflammation is just like letting a bunch of rowdy high schoolers run into the symphony hall, run on the stage and start kicking over the instruments. And now the hormones, the instruments don't know how to play. All right. And now adiponectin gets derailed. And when the moment that adiponectin gets derailed, guess what? Insulin can't do what it's supposed to do in the right way. Now your blood glucose goes up. Now you've got inflammation. Now you've got too much body fat. And this is the setup for the road towards type 2 diabetes. Inflammation plays a critical role. Body fat plays a pretty critical role. And so this is why I always tell people, respect your body fat. All right. It's necessary for you to look good and it's necessary for you to feel good. But you never want to have too much of it. So if you want to lose weight because you're carrying a little too much weight, totally fine. Vanity aside, it's good to lose extra body fat because you want to always optimize your metabolism. You want your body to do everything it can do. You want that adiponectin to be able to help your insulin. And forget about what you're hearing about glucose spikes and glucose crashes. There's some truth to that kind of stuff, but I would tell you it's a lot simpler than that. Stay in good shape. Don't overeat. Eat plant-based foods. You'll keep your body fat in good shape. Your adiponectin will be made normally. The symphony is going to be playing its tune the way it's supposed to, and insulin is going to be working, and your metabolism is going to be in better shape. And so this is why excess body fat equals excess inflammation, equals derailed hormones, equals metabolic syndrome, equals disaster down the line.
I love your metaphors. They're so helpful.
Yeah.
I love the idea up on stage kicking the instruments.
But I feel like this ties into one of the questions from our audience tonight. Jeanette wrote in, can you recommend foods that can help women in perimenopause? So you're talking about, hormones and that kind of thing. So she says, some of the changes include lack of sleep, itchy skin, brain fog, rapid heartbeat at night, etc. Are there any foods that you would recommend that could help her?
Yeah, well, so, menopause and perimenopause is a big deal. as women get older. And by the way, men go through their own thing. It's like an andropause where testosterone changes. In women, it's mostly estrogen we think about, but it's also other hormones as well that are adjusting themselves. And some women actually sail through it with not too much problem, but they do feel different. And other women, I would say most women, wind up encountering and struggling with some symptoms that are very, very different than how they're used to feeling. All right. So one of the things that can happen is that you do want to actually. So why is this? Why does this happen? So I looked into this, by the way, and it's so fascinating that when your estrogen levels drop, it shifts the way that your brain actually processes hormones as well, and certain parts of your brain get activated. And in fact, one of the parts of the brain that gets activated inappropriately is your temperature sensor in the hypothalamus. So deep in your brain, there's like a part of your brain that basically is your body's thermostat. And normally, think about it, Whitney. Like your thermostat of your house might be set in a comfortable range that makes sense for wherever you're living. Just like our body has a temperature sensor. Like we want it to be warmer than this degree, but we don't want it to be too hot. So we want our house to be keeping it within a comfortable zone. That's how we normally live. When you go through menopause and during perimenopause, the temperature sensor, the thermostat, starts to narrow way down inappropriately. Now, instead of having 10 degrees difference, like 65 to 75 degrees in a house, let's just say, right? Most people probably live somewhere within that zone. All right, some people like really crank up the AC if you're depending on where you live. But I'm just telling you, if you actually narrowed it from 65 to 75 to 69 and 71, okay, that's so narrow. Now your body can't possibly adjust to the outside temperature, right? The thermostat's like, oh, wait a minute, it's too hot. Oh, wait a minute, it's too cold. Oh, wait a minute, it's too hot. This is the cause of hot flashes. All right. It's an amazing thing. And it's actually only recently worked out that the thermostat gets narrowed. Okay.
Interesting.
And for some women, it actually never disappears, like that narrowing, and they got to get used to it. But for some women, it actually kind of get a little bit more towards normal after you finish menopause. Okay. So what do you need to actually do? Because there's so many of these little tiny tweaks that are going on in your body. What do you need to do to actually try to counter and adapt yourself to this? Number one is definitely, if your body's kind of not comfortable and you feel kind of agitated, aggravated, irritated, you definitely want to lower inflammation. Any inflammation that's going on in your body is going to make all of that feel a lot worse. So everything we just talked about, on this podcast, it actually makes a difference. You want to lower inflammation in your body because the last thing you want,
right? Eat plants to lower inflammation.
And plants are the key to lowering inflammation because they feed your gut microbiome, and a healthy gut microbiome, healthy bacteria, helps your body lower inflammation. Like, some people go, oh, I'm gonna take some Advil. Look, your gut microbiome is like Mother Nature's super Advil. Just lowers inflammation by itself, kinder, gentler, no side effects, no stomach ulcers. It just does it nicely. All right. That's one of the things that you really want to do is eat plants, treat your gut microbiome well. And by the way, the other thing that you want to do besides, and this is having to do with the pattern of eating, is don't eat really late at night. Okay. And I know that it's hard sometimes not to snack at night, but I always tell people when you put your dishes away from dinner, that's it. You're done for the day. Okay. Not until tomorrow. All right. And if you really want to intermittently fast, skip breakfast, and now you're eating even later. But here's the thing. If you eat late, it's going to disrupt your ability to get good, deep sleep. I don't care if you're a teenager or if you're a 20-year-old working on Wall Street, or you're, or a woman going through menopause at the age of, 50. The bottom line is that if you eat late, you're going to disrupt your sleep. Now, menopause already has difficulty with sleep. Hot flashes could be part of the cause. You eat late and you disturb your body's metabolism and you're not getting good sleep. now you're going to be doubly aggravated. Okay. It's going to be even harder to do it. So these are, I wish I could tell you there's like a match, like, oh, just eat asparagus, you're going to be fine. But it's not so simple. That it's really what you eat, plants, when you eat, which would be don't eat late at night. Okay. No midnight snacks. And then how much you eat, what you eat, when you eat, how much you eat. Don't overeat, because when you overeat, you're going to actually be loading up those fuel tanks. Remember, body fat's those fuel tanks. The bigger you grow the body fat, the more inflammation there's going to be. Oh, now you're back to where we started, where you've got chronic inflammation going on. And if you're going through menopause, that's just going to piss you off, right? So the bottom line is that all these practical tips make a big difference. And there's so many foods that have anti-inflammatory benefits. Strawberries can help to lower inflammation. Avocado, a great source of dietary fiber to lower inflammation. Pears, 6 grams of dietary fiber, an average pear. Hey, that's not so bad. Dates, figs. These are all like nice little sources of artichoke. And again, I'm trying to talk about foods that I enjoy eating, right? Like, you guys come over to my house, I'll make you, some plant-based foods with artichoke and tomatoes and avocado. Kind of sounds like a Sakara meal box, but the bottom line is that this is the good stuff. What you eat, when you eat, and how much you eat, all of those things matter.
So helpful. Thank you, Dr. Lee.
I see clients often, they tell me that once they hit that perimenopause, headed into menopause, that they, even if they're eating the same amount and exercising the same amount, they seem to be gaining weight or can't lose weight anymore. And I know we've talked about in our past talks about metabolism, but I think this point about inflammation is such a missing piece that's not talked about enough, and that inflammation can have you hold on to excess weight, and that it might not be, all of this extra necessarily like consumption of calories that is keeping on your weight, but really it's that inflammation. And so by eating these anti-inflammatory foods, getting that inflammation at bay, not only are your symptoms, your hot flashes and things like that going to feel better, but that feeling of carrying around excess weight can also be minimized through eating anti-inflammatory foods.
That and more, because studies have shown that as you become more inflamed, especially as you get into the middle part of your life, inflammatory fat, especially visceral fat, sets you up for at least a dozen types of cancer: breast cancer, lung cancer, stomach cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer. These are all the ones that you want to dodge, right? So we all know somebody has been affected by cancer, I'm sure. And the bottom line is that you don't want to be one of those people. And yet the power to be able to stack the odds in your own favor has to do with lowering inflammation, for which eating whole plant-based foods is a easy lift for anybody compared to having to go to that chemo infusion unit.
Such a good reminder of why eating these colorful plates each day, nourishing our bodies with these plant-based foods, can help us to reduce the inflammation, to not just live longer, but live better into our later years, and hopefully avoid some of those diseases. So eating to beat disease, as you would say, Dr. Lee. This has been such a wonderful conversation. And since you've been on the Sakara Life podcast before, you know that we like to end with what we call light work. So I'd love to hear if you have a light work practice for our listeners tonight.
I actually think that it's really important to do a little reset every single day. And that reset is something we forget to do, I think, because we all got busy lives, and I don't care what you do for a living, is a task. there's always a chore, there's always a punch list, there's always an appointment or a phone call or a meeting we all have to go to. And, when you get out of bed and the first thing you do is start checking your schedule on your phone, and then your heart rate goes up, and then you got to rush through taking a shower, getting dressed, getting prepared, eating something. Listen, you've kind of lost the game even before the day began. For me, what I try to do is when I get up in the morning, I take my time. It is my time to get a little extra time to reset. And so take a shower, get ready, get dressed. I try to take 20 minutes, 15 minutes. All right, go for a walk, read a book, go outside and breathe some air, fresh air. Do something that allows you not to be in the zone of productivity. And for me, that allows me to reset and feel much more balanced before I set out. And usually, if I am able to do that, now I'll be honest with you, I'm human as well. Sometimes I gotta be rushing off. I gotta catch a flight. I gotta do my day. I don't have the luxury of that, but I try to remember my little, light work thing is get up, use that time in the morning. I steal it for myself. It's my time. And by the way, sometimes when I do that, I'm like, I'm not just instinctively reaching for some breakfast food. Maybe I'll decide to skip breakfast, and now I'm extending my fasting period, which is better for my metabolism. You do it every now and then. It's all good for your health. And so I just encourage people, if you want to know how I use my morning, I take 15 to 20 minutes every single morning that I can. We're human. Life is, it's like there's realism. But if you do that, that's the easiest time to steal time for yourself in order to be able to do that mental reset. Lower stress, allows you to have a little bit clearer in your head. And then the decision you start making it right from the get-go, you can be a little bit more intentional about it.
I love that. And lower stress and inflammation.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. You're as incredible as always. Really appreciate your time, all the thought and research you put into helping each of us live longer, more fulfilled lives. Thank you.
Thank you,
It's
Dr.
a real
Lee.
pleasure. Thanks for having me on again.
And if you haven't listened to our other podcasts with Dr. Lee, be sure to check those out as well. Thank you, everyone, for coming here tonight. Look forward to seeing you at the next talk.
Bye.
Bye.